Imagine being 8 months pregnant and watching your husband walk into your hospital room with his mistress. One moment of jealousy, one single kick, and an entire empire built on lies begins to crumble. She was left bleeding on the floor. But what no one knew, the hospital's director, the man who held the evidence, was her uncle. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's about justice, power, and the courage to stand back up when the world tries to break you. Stay till the end to see how one woman turned her pain into a law that changed everything. If this story hooked you, don't forget to like, drop your thoughts in the comments, share it with someone who loves a good drama, and subscribe for more viral stories that hit straight to the heart. The security camera in the maternity ward corridor captured it all in grainy black and white. Timestamp 2:47 a.m. A pregnant woman collapsing against sterile white tiles. A woman in designer heels standing over her, then walking away without looking back. Medical alarms piercing the silence like screams. Within 6 hours, the footage would be everywhere. Twitter trending with hashtag Justice for Madison. 2.3 million tweets and climbing. TikTok videos dissecting every frame. News anchors using words like assault, millionaire, mistress, hospital. The kind of story that made people stop scrolling, made them call their sisters, their mothers, their friends. But before the world knew Madison Crawford's name, before the hashtags and the headlines, there was just a woman trying to survive the worst day of her life. This is her story. Madison Elizabeth Crawford sat in examination room 437 at Denver Presbyterian Hospital, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other clutching her phone. 34 years old, 8 months pregnant, and more alone than she had ever felt. The fetal heart monitor beeped its steady rhythm beside her, the only reassuring sound in a world that had started crumbling weeks ago. She had called Derek 3 times. 3 voicemails, each one a little more desperate than the last. "Hey, it's me. I'm at the hospital now. Room 437. Dr. Patel says everything looks good, but my blood pressure's up. It would really help if you were here. Love you." Madison hung up and blinked back tears. The nurse had left to get her test results. Through the window, she could see the parking lot, cars coming and going in the ordinary rhythm of a Tuesday afternoon. Somewhere out there, Derek was closing a $40 million deal, or so he said. She pressed her palm against her belly, feeling the baby shift. After 3 miscarriages, this pregnancy felt like borrowed time, like something precious she was terrified of losing. "You and me, baby girl," Madison whispered. "We're going to be okay." The words felt hollow even as she spoke them. Madison's marriage to Derek Hale had once been the kind of love story people envied. They had met 6 years ago at a charity gala at the Denver Art Museum. She had been riding high on a successful marketing campaign, corner office with a view, her name on industry awards. He had approached her with that confident smile, telling her about his vision for Hale Development Group. "I'm building something big," he had said. "I need someone brilliant beside me." She had believed him, given up her career to become his partner, rebranding his company, handling his image, making him into the kind of millionaire Denver society magazines featured on their covers. They had married at a resort in Aspen, 200 guests, an ice sculpture that cost more than most people's cars. Then came the miscarriages. 9 weeks, 12 weeks, 14 weeks. Each loss had driven a wedge between them that Madison kept trying to ignore. Derek working later and later. Derek's phone always face down on the table. Derek's excuses growing thinner and thinner. "Something's not right, honey." Her mother Carol's warning 3 weeks ago, delivered over coffee in Madison's $3.2 million home in Cherry Creek. "I know that look. I had that look with your father." Madison had defended him. "He's just stressed, Mom. The Henderson deal is huge. Once it closes, things will be different." But things weren't different. They were worse. Through the hospital window, Madison saw a silver Mercedes pull into the parking lot. Her heart leaped. Derek's car. He came. He actually came. Then the passenger door opened and a woman stepped out. Tall, beautiful, confident in the way that comes from youth and ambition. Designer dress that hugged every curve. Madison watched her laugh at something Derek said, watched him smile back, and felt something cold settle in her chest. She knew that woman. Vanessa Kingsley. Business development consultant. The woman Derek had hired 18 months ago to help with client relations. Madison's hand tightened on her belly as contractions rippled through her abdomen. Not real labor, just Braxton Hicks, just stress, just her body responding to the sudden understanding that her husband was walking toward her hospital room with his mistress. I knew before they even walked in, Madison would tell the police later. I knew my life was about to end. The door to her room opened. Derek entered first, wearing his usual armor of tailored suit and expensive cologne. Vanessa followed, heels clicking against linoleum. Derek, Madison's voice came out smaller than she wanted. What is she doing here? Vanessa needed to sign the Henderson contract, Derek said smoothly. Hospital was on the way. Vanessa stepped forward, and Madison saw something dangerous flash in her eyes. Actually, Derek, let's not lie anymore. Madison felt her world tilting. Tell her to leave, now. I'm not going anywhere, Vanessa said. He doesn't want me to. Derek, please. Madison's voice broke. Not here, not now. Derek avoided her eyes. Madison, you're making a scene. Your husband has been mine for 18 months, Vanessa continued, her voice cold and sharp. This, she gestured at Madison's belly, this is just an obligation he's finishing. The words hit like physical blows. Madison looked at Derek, waiting for him to deny it, to tell Vanessa to stop, to do anything that resembled the man she had married. Instead, he stood there, silent. And in that silence, Madison heard the truth. You brought your mistress to my maternity appointment? Madison whispered. Stop calling me that, Vanessa snapped. I'm not his mistress. You're just the wife he's stuck with. Pain shot through Madison's abdomen, sharp and real. She clutched the examination table. I need to sit down. Nurse Janet rushed over from the doorway. Ma'am, come back to your room. You need to rest. But Vanessa wasn't finished. You think carrying his baby makes you special? He told me your marriage was dead. Please get them out of here, Madison begged the nurse. No, I'm done hiding. I'm done being the secret. Madison stumbled toward the exam table, the nurse helping her. The world was spinning, narrowing down to the sound of her own heartbeat and the toxic words still pouring from Vanessa's mouth. The door opened wider. Vanessa followed Madison in. This was the moment that would change everything. The moment captured on security cameras, dissected by lawyers, replayed on news stations. The moment that would make Madison Crawford a name, a hashtag, a symbol. But in that moment, she was just a woman, pregnant, scared, about to discover exactly how much one person could take from another, and how far one man's silence could fall. Nurse Janet adjusted the fetal heart monitor, her movements quick and efficient, but Madison could see concern in her eyes. The blood pressure cuff tightened around Madison's arm, released, tightened again. Your pressure's elevated, Janet said quietly. I'm going to call Dr. Patel. The door opened before she could leave. Vanessa walked in as if she owned the room, as if the rules didn't apply to her. Derek remained in the hallway, frozen like a man watching a car accident in slow motion. Ma'am, you can't be in here, Janet said firmly. Give us a minute. Vanessa's voice carried the kind of authority that came from never being told no. I'm calling security. Janet moved toward the phone. Please, Madison gasped. Just make her leave. But Vanessa closed the door partially, leaning in close enough that Madison could smell her perfume. Expensive, cloying. Nothing like the subtle scents Madison used to wear before pregnancy made everything nauseating. Here's what's going to happen, Vanessa said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more violent than shouting. Derek is going to divorce you. You'll get your alimony, your child support. But he's mine. Madison tried to reach for the call button, but Vanessa grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to control. Get out, Madison sobbed. Please, my baby. Your baby is a trap, Vanessa hissed, and you know it. The words struck something deep inside Madison. All those months of Derek's distance, his coldness, his absence, all those nights she had lain awake wondering if the baby was the only thing keeping him tethered to their marriage. Vanessa was voicing Madison's darkest fear. You were never enough for him, Vanessa continued. Not smart enough, not exciting enough, just convenient, until you weren't. Madison pulled her wrist free and tried to stand, tried to get away from this woman and her poison. Her legs felt unsteady. The room tilted. And then it happened. In a flash of rage that would be debated in courtrooms and comment sections, Vanessa's leg moved forward. Her designer heel connected with Madison's shin, a deliberate kick with the full force of 18 months of jealousy and frustration behind it. Madison fell backward, hitting the examination table before crumpling to the floor. The fetal monitor crashed beside her, wires ripping free, alarms screaming into the sudden chaos. She felt warmth spreading beneath her. Blood. Too much blood. "My baby," Madison gasped, hands clutching her belly. "Oh God, my baby." Derek rushed in, his face white. "What the hell happened?" "She attacked me." Vanessa's voice transformed instantly into panic, into victim. "She tried to grab me and fell. Derek, she's crazy." Madison tried to speak, tried to tell him the truth, but the words came out barely above a whisper. "You kicked me, Derek, she kicked me." Derek looked between them, paralyzed by the choice in front of him. His pregnant wife bleeding on the floor, his mistress trembling by the door. Madison watched understanding dawn in his eyes. He knew what had happened. She could see it, and still he hesitated. "Derek," Vanessa's voice took on an edge. "She's lying. Look at her. She's unstable." Nurse Janet burst back in with a crash cart. "What happened?" "She fell," Vanessa said. "I tried to catch her." Madison reached toward the nurse, toward anyone who might help. "Please save my baby. Please." The room filled with people in scrubs, someone shouting about hemorrhaging, someone else calling for OB. Madison felt hands on her, felt herself being lifted onto a stretcher. Through the chaos, she locked eyes with Derek one final time. He stood in the doorway, watching, not helping, not defending, just watching. Vanessa backed toward the wall, her hands shaking as reality seemed to settle over her. The thing she had done in a moment of rage was real now, was consequences, was something that couldn't be taken back. The security camera in the corner recorded it all. The angle wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Enough to show Vanessa's leg moving forward, enough to show Madison falling, enough to show Derek Hale doing absolutely nothing while his wife bled on a hospital floor. As Madison was rushed down the corridor, the fetal monitor alarm still screaming, she felt her baby move one last time. A flutter, a whisper, a prayer. "Don't leave me," she thought. "Please don't leave me too." Behind her in room 437, Vanessa Kingsley stood in the wreckage of what she had done. Designer heels standing in someone else's blood. The life she had wanted, the man she thought she loved, all of it slipping away as reality crashed in. Derek pulled out his phone, not to call Madison's mother, not to follow his wife to surgery, but to call his lawyer. The first decision in what would become a pattern: choose himself, protect himself, let everyone else bleed. Somewhere in the hospital, in an office on the administrative floor, a man named William Hartford was about to start his morning. He would pour his coffee, check his emails, and learn that an assault had occurred in his maternity ward. He would ask for the victim's name, and when he heard Madison Carroll Crawford, his coffee cup would freeze halfway to his lips, because William Hartford was Madison's uncle. The brother her mother Carol hadn't spoken to in 15 years. The hospital director, who hadn't known his niece, had moved back to Denver, had married, had nearly died in his own building. But he was about to find out. And when he did, Derek Hale and Vanessa Kingsley would discover that money couldn't buy everything. Some things, it turned out, were priceless, like family, like justice, like the fury of a man who had failed someone once and wouldn't fail them again. The security footage timestamp read 3:04 a.m. when Madison was wheeled into emergency surgery. By 3:15, the first nurse was being interviewed by hospital security. By 3:30, the footage was being backed up to secure servers. And by 6 a.m., when William Hartford walked into his office and learned what had happened to his niece, the whole terrible machinery of justice began to turn. William Hartford had been hospital director for 20 years. He had seen miracles and tragedies, had held the hands of dying patients, and celebrated with new mothers. At 58, with silver hair and weathered hands, he thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. Patricia, his assistant, entered his office at 6:15 a.m. carrying coffee and a stack of incident reports. "Morning, Dr. Hartford. The assault case from last night needs your statement. Police are asking. William didn't look up from his computer screen. Which case? Maternity ward. Pregnant woman attacked by another woman. It's all over the news already. Now he looked up. Already? Security footage leaked somehow. Social media is going crazy. Patricia set down the reports. The victim's mother has been here since 3 a.m. Won't leave until she speaks with you. William sighed. Family members always wanted to speak with the director, as if his title could undo what had happened. Schedule her for 10. I need to review everything first. She's insistent. Says her daughter almost died. Patricia checked her tablet. Her name is Carol Madison. The coffee cup stopped halfway to William's mouth. Carol Madison. His sister's married name. The sister he hadn't spoken to in 15 years. Not since that terrible argument at a family barbecue that had split them apart over something so stupid he couldn't even remember what it was. Just pride. Just stubbornness. Just two people who loved each other but couldn't find their way back. The victim, William said slowly, his heart suddenly hammering. What's her full name? Patricia scrolled through her tablet. Madison Crawford. Madison Carol Crawford. Age 34. William stood so abruptly he knocked files to the floor. Papers scattered across expensive carpet. Get me the patient file, now. Patricia hurried out, startled by the urgency in his voice. William braced himself against the desk, memories flooding back. Little Maddie, age 7, learning to skip rocks at the lake. Maddie at 13, crying because kids at school were mean. Maddie at 19, making him promise to walk her down the aisle someday since her father had died when she was 12. Uncle Will, promise you'll walk me down the aisle? Promise, I promise, kiddo. Wouldn't miss it. But he had missed it, missed everything. 15 years of silence because he and Carol were both too proud to apologize first. 15 years of wondering how his niece had turned out, whether she was happy, whether she ever thought of him. Patricia returned with the file. William opened it with shaking hands. The photo showed a woman he barely recognized. 34 now, not 19. But those were Maddie's eyes, his sister's nose. Family, unmistakable, and undeniable. And she looked broken. Tubes everywhere, bruises forming. The kind of photo that belonged in evidence files, not in the hospital where he was supposed to keep people safe. Oh my God, William whispered. Maddie. Sir, do you know her? She's my niece. The words came out rough. William cleared his throat, pulled himself together with visible effort. When he looked up again, his eyes had gone hard as steel. Get me everything, every witness statement, every frame of security footage. Lock it all in my personal server. Nothing gets deleted. Nothing gets lost. Do you understand? Sir, if she's family, maybe you shouldn't be directly involved. That's exactly why I'm involved. William grabbed his white coat. No one touches this case but me. Where is she now? Recovery room, 5th floor, still critical. The baby's in NICU. William walked out without another word. 20 years of directing this hospital, of maintaining professional distance, of being the steady hand in crisis. All of it burned away by the image of his niece, battered and broken 3 floors below him. He took the stairs, needed the time to prepare himself, needed to figure out what he would say to Carol after 15 years. Sorry seemed too small. I should have called, seemed too late. The door to recovery room 5A stood partially open. William paused outside, heard the soft beep of monitors, heard someone crying quietly. His sister's voice, though age had roughened it. He knocked, entered, and met Carol's eyes for the first time since that summer barbecue when everything had fallen apart. They stared at each other across the hospital bed where Madison lay unconscious. 15 years of silence packed into 5 seconds. What are you doing here? Carol's voice was cold, defensive. I run this hospital, Carol. Of course you do. You always landed on top. Bitterness there, old and familiar. William looked at Madison instead of his sister, tubes breathing for her, monitors tracking her fragile hold on life. How is she? Why do you care? You haven't spoken to her in 15 years. The accusation hit home. William's voice cracked. I didn't know she was in Denver. I didn't know she was married. I didn't know. He moved closer to the bed, saw Madison's pale face up close. I didn't know she was dying. Carol's anger deflated into exhaustion. They did an emergency C-section. The baby's in NICU, 3 pounds, 4 ounces. They don't know if she'll make it. William touched Madison's hand gently. So small, even now. He remembered teaching her to fish, to drive, to be brave. Who did this to her? Her husband's mistress. Some woman named Vanessa. Kicked her while she was pregnant. Carol's voice shook, and her husband just stood there, watched it happen. William's jaw clenched, then loosened. He wasn't here for revenge. He was here for something better, something that lasted. Has she been arrested? Yes, but her fancy lawyer got her out on bail this morning. $50,000 like it's nothing. It won't be nothing when I'm done. Carol looked at him then, really looked. Why are you helping? After everything? Because I was a stubborn fool 15 years ago, William said quietly, and I won't be a coward now. He sat on Madison's other side, took her other hand, formed a bridge between mother and daughter. I'm here, Maddie. Uncle Will's here, and I'm not letting anyone hurt you again. Madison's fingers twitched, still unconscious, but somewhere deep down, maybe she heard. Maybe she knew she wasn't alone anymore. William looked at Carol across their niece's broken body. We should have done this 15 years ago. Done what? Chosen family. He squeezed Madison's hand gently, but we're choosing it now, and anyone who hurt her is going to learn what that means. Carol nodded slowly. The police want to talk to me. They're saying it might be hard to prove assault. The footage isn't totally clear. Her lawyer's already spinning it as an accident. Then we make it clear. William stood, his hospital director persona sliding back into place. I want every staff member who was present interviewed today. I want medical documentation of every injury. I want that security footage analyzed by the best forensic video expert in Colorado. He looked at his sister, and I want you to know that this hospital and everything I have is behind Madison, no matter what it costs. She can't afford, she doesn't need to. That's what family does. The word hung in the air between them. Family. The thing they had let slip away over pride and hurt feelings. The thing that mattered more than anything else when the world fell apart. I'm sorry, Carol said suddenly. For what I said. That summer, I was angry about things that had nothing to do with you. I'm sorry too, William replied. For being too proud to call. For missing her wedding. For not being there. You're here now. I'm here now, William agreed. He looked down at Madison. And I'm not going anywhere. A nurse knocked softly, entered with updated vitals. She's stabilizing. The baby's holding steady, too. It's going to be touch and go, but they're fighters. They are, William said. They're family. After the nurse left, William pulled out his phone, started making calls, first to the hospital's legal department, then to Detective Marcus Reeves, an old friend who owed him favors, then to the best civil attorney in Denver. Carol watched him work, saw the transformation from estranged uncle to powerful ally. You really think we can win this? William looked up from his phone. I don't think, I know, because the truth is on our side, and because I have something Derek Hale doesn't. What's that? A reason to fight that matters more than money. 3 days after the assault, District Attorney Margaret Lawson held a press conference on the courthouse steps. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions, the kind of media circus that made careers or ended them. Madison watched from her hospital bed, Carol and William on either side of her. She was still weak, still healing, but the baby had stabilized. Emma Grace Crawford, 3 pounds, 4 ounces of determination, breathing on her own in the NICU 2 floors down. Today we are charging Vanessa Kingsley with assault in the 2nd degree for the deliberate attack on Madison Crawford, DA Lawson announced to the cameras. The evidence is clear, the intent was clear, and this office will not tolerate violence against pregnant women. Social media exploded. #justice. For Madison trended worldwide within an hour. Vanessa's mugshot appeared on every news site, her face frozen in that particular expression of someone realizing consequences were real. Derek Hale's company website crashed from the traffic. His business partners started calling for emergency meetings. Investors pulled out. The carefully constructed empire of a self-made millionaire began to crumble. Madison felt something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. She's going to pay, Madison whispered, watching Vanessa being led into the courthouse in handcuffs. Finally. Justice is coming, baby, Carol said, squeezing her hand. William was quieter, more cautious. The fight's just beginning, Maddie. But Madison barely heard him. She was watching Derek on the screen now, surrounded by lawyers, refusing to comment. He looked smaller somehow, less powerful, less like the man who had convinced her to give up everything for his dreams. Detective Marcus Reeves visited that afternoon, sitting beside Madison's bed with the careful gentleness of someone who had seen too much violence. The footage is good, he said. Not perfect, but good. You can see Vanessa follow you into the room. You can see her leg move forward. You can see you both fade him out. He paused. The problem is the defense. What problem? William asked sharply. They're going to argue the kick was accidental, that Vanessa was stepping back to avoid being grabbed, that the camera angle makes it look worse than it was. Reeves looked at Madison. They're going to put you on trial. Your mental health, your marriage, everything. Let them, Madison said, but her voice shook. I'm telling the truth. I know, but truth doesn't always win in court. Rich people have expensive lawyers who are very good at making truth look like lies. He wasn't wrong. At the preliminary hearing 1 week later, Richard Walsh stood before the judge in a suit that cost more than Madison's hospital bills and systematically dismantled the prosecution's case. Your Honor, the prosecution relies entirely on grainy security footage that can be interpreted multiple ways, Walsh said smoothly. My client's foot movement is consistent with stepping backward to avoid an emotionally unstable pregnant woman. Mrs. Crawford has a documented history of anxiety and depression. She was heavily medicated. Her perception cannot be trusted. Madison sat in the gallery with William and Carol, watching her entire life be twisted into something unrecognizable. The miscarriages became proof of mental instability. The anxiety medication became proof of delusion. Even her love for her baby became suspect, painted as desperation to keep a husband who no longer wanted her. The judge, an older woman with tired eyes, listened to both sides. I'll allow the case to proceed to trial, but I'm reducing bail to personal recognizance. Miss Kingsley is not a flight risk. Vanessa walked out of the courthouse that afternoon, free. Not even bail money spent, just a promise to show up for trial, which her lawyers assured everyone she would. The reporters swarmed her. Miss Kingsley, do you have anything to say to Madison Crawford? Vanessa's answer had been prepared by her PR team, polished until it gleamed. I hope she gets the mental health support she clearly needs. This has been a nightmare for everyone. The slight smile as she walked away. That was what broke Madison. She watched on her phone from the hospital, saw Vanessa climb into an expensive car and drive away, and felt something inside her crack. All the hope from 3 days ago evaporated. Rich people won, that was the rule, had always been the rule. How is this happening? Madison asked William that evening. There's video. There's witnesses. She has a very expensive lawyer, William said grimly. So that's it? Rich people just win? Not if I have anything to say about it. But even William's determination couldn't stop what came next. The hospital billing department sent someone to Madison's room the next morning, a nervous administrator with a clipboard and apologetic eyes. Mrs. Crawford, we need to discuss your account. I have insurance, Madison said. Your insurance denied the claim. They're citing a pre-existing condition clause. What condition? Your previous miscarriages. They're classifying this as a high-risk pregnancy, which your policy doesn't cover under the terms Derek Hale selected. The words took a moment to register. Derek had picked their insurance, had chosen the cheap option with clauses and exceptions, had saved his company money while exposing his wife to risk. How much do I owe? Madison asked faintly. For the emergency C-section, NICU care, and your recovery, $287,000. The room spun. Carol gasped. Even William looked shocked. That's impossible, Carol said. We can't possibly. Send the bill to my office, William interrupted. I'll handle it. Uncle Will, I can't let you. Yes, you can. That's what family does. It was the first time Madison had called him uncle in 15 years. The word hung in the air, precious and fragile. But the financial blow wasn't the worst thing that happened that day. At 4 p.m., a process server entered Madison's hospital room and handed her an envelope. Divorce papers. Derek was suing for full custody of Emma, claiming Madison was mentally unfit. He was seeking to freeze all their joint assets. He was demanding no spousal support, claiming their marriage had been fraudulent from the start. Madison read the papers with shaking hands. Every word was a knife. Every legal term was designed to take away everything she had left. "He's trying to take Emma," she whispered. "He's trying to take everything." This was peak despair, number 2. The moment when the system Madison had believed in revealed itself as a machine designed to protect the powerful. When justice felt like a fairy tale people told to make themselves feel better. "I should have just stayed quiet," Madison said, tears streaming. "I should have just let them have each other. Now I've lost everything." William gripped her shoulders. "No, you told the truth, and the truth is worth fighting for." "I'm so tired of fighting." "Then let me fight for you." But even as he said it, Derek Hale was 3 miles away in his downtown penthouse, plotting his next move with Vanessa and an army of lawyers and PR consultants. Derek's penthouse had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Denver, the kind of view that cost $7 million and reminded you every day that you had won at life. But Derek wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at Richard Walsh and a PR consultant named Brett, who specialized in crisis management. "The criminal trial starts in 6 weeks, Walsh said, spreading documents across Derek's glass coffee table. "We need to destroy her credibility before then." "How?" Derek asked. He looked tired, older than his 42 years. The stress of public opinion had carved lines into his face. Brett leaned forward. "We paint Madison as unstable, obsessed, dangerous. We make the jury wonder if she's the real threat." Vanessa sat beside Derek, her hand on his knee. She had moved in 3 days after the assault, and the tabloids had torn them apart for it. But she was determined. If she was going down, she wasn't going down alone. "I can give you material," Vanessa offered. "She sent me threatening texts." Derek looked at her. "She did?" Vanessa smiled. "She will have, once I'm done." "Wait," Derek said, hesitation finally finding its voice. "Are we talking about fabricating evidence?" Walsh didn't blink. "We're talking about aggressive defense. Your wife is suing you for assault by proxy. Her uncle is the hospital director with unlimited resources. Public opinion is destroying your business. You want to see your daughter again? We go nuclear." Derek looked out at his expensive view, thought about the empire he had built from nothing, thought about the bar from a trailer park who had clawed his way to penthouses and power. He hadn't come this far to lose it all now. "Do it," he said quietly. And so the campaign began. First came the leaked medical records. Illegal, but effective. Madison's anxiety medication history appeared on gossip websites. Her 3 miscarriages were framed not as tragedies, but as evidence of mental instability. Tabloid headlines screamed, "Was Madison Crawford too unstable to carry a baby?" Then came the fake witnesses. 3 former co-workers from Madison's old marketing firm, all of whom had been laid off when the company downsized. Derek's team paid them $50,000 total to give statements. Madison was erratic at work. She accused people of plotting against her. She had anger issues. Posted anonymously on social media, the claims spread like wildfire. People who had never met Madison suddenly had strong opinions about her character. Then came the financial warfare. Derek filed emergency bankruptcy on their joint business LLC, the one Madison had co-signed years ago when she was still helping build his empire. The move triggered an IRS audit on Madison, froze her credit cards, locked their bank accounts. Carol got an eviction notice the same day. The building where she had lived for 12 years had been sold. The new owner was a shell company traced back to Derek's holdings. Everyone in the building had 30 days to vacate. Madison learned about it all in rapid succession, one blow after another until she could barely breathe. Her mother called first, crying, "Maddie, I'm being evicted. I don't know where to go." "What? How?" "The building was sold. They're evicting everyone." Then Madison's phone buzzed with an IRS audit notice. Then her credit card was declined when a nurse tried to buy her lunch. Then she turned on the television and saw her private medical records discussed by talking heads who didn't know her but had decided she was crazy. 3 catastrophes in one day. Financial ruin, public humiliation, family homelessness. Madison sat in her hospital bed, phone clutched in shaking hands, and felt the world closing in. He's destroying everything, and I can't stop him. William found her like that an hour later. He had been in meetings all day, had come back to check on her, and found his niece staring at nothing with the vacant eyes of someone who had been beaten one too many times. Maddie? She didn't respond at first. Then quietly, he's taking my mother's home. He's making it so I can't even buy food, and everyone thinks I'm crazy. She looked up at William. Maybe I am. Maybe I did imagine it. Maybe Vanessa's right and I'm just... Stop. William sat beside her, took her hands. Listen to me. You are not crazy. You are not imagining things. You were assaulted and now they're trying to make you doubt your own mind. It's a tactic, and it only works if we let it. How do we fight this? He has unlimited money, unlimited lawyers. And I have what? A hospital bill I can't pay? And a baby in NICU? You have me, William said firmly. And I'm not just your uncle. I'm the director of the hospital where all this happened. I have resources Derek doesn't know about. And I'm about to teach him that power isn't just about money. That night, William made his own calls. To the hospital's legal team. To Detective Reeves. To attorney Lisa Romano, a civil rights lawyer with a reputation for taking on wealthy defendants and winning. They met in William's office at midnight. Evidence spread across every surface. Security footage, medical records, witness statements, financial documents showing Derek's on shell companies and offshore accounts. We need to hit back, William said, and we need to hit harder than they expect. Lisa Romano, a sharp woman in her 40s who had built her practice on pro bono cases nobody else would touch, nodded. I'll handle the civil case. But we need more than video footage. We need to show pattern and intent. Detective Reeves pulled up his laptop. I've been digging into Vanessa Kingsley's background, sealed juvenile record, assault on a classmate when she was 16. Can we unseal it? William asked. Not legally, but I have a friend who remembers the case. Girl broke another girl's nose over a boy. Sound familiar? What about Derek's finances? Lisa asked. The hospital's counsel, a quiet man named Henderson, who had worked for William for a decade, opened a thick file. If we can prove he's using illegal tactics to harm Madison, we can freeze his assets. The IRS audit he triggered on her? That leaves a paper trail. The shell company evicting Carol? That's harassment. William leaned back in his chair, a plan forming. Here's what we do. First, we back up all the security footage. 3 separate encrypted drives, one for the day, one for Detective Reeves, one in my personal safe. Nobody makes this disappear. Done, Henderson said. Second, we provide legal representation for every hospital staff member who witnessed the assault. Derek's team will try to intimidate them. We make sure they have protection. I'll handle that, Lisa said. Third, I write a detailed medical expert report. Injuries consistent with a deliberate kick, not an accidental fall. 20 years as a hospital director should count for something. It will, Reeves said, especially when I find proof of witness tampering. William's eyes hardened. And fourth, we show up. Every hearing, every deposition, every court appearance. We show Derek Hale that Madison isn't alone, that she has family, and family doesn't give up. They worked through the night. By dawn, they had a strategy. By the end of the week, they had evidence of Derek paying those 3 former co-workers. By the end of the month, they had filed motions to freeze his assets pending investigation of financial crimes. The tide was turning, slowly, but turning. The custody hearing happened 6 weeks after the assault. Madison was out of the hospital finally, staying in a small apartment William had arranged, visiting Emma in the NICU every single day. The baby was up to 4 pounds now, breathing stronger, fighting her way toward life. Family court was less formal than criminal court, but somehow more intimidating. This wasn't about punishment. This was about Emma, about whether Madison would get to keep the daughter she had nearly died protecting. Derek's lawyer stood before the judge, confident and polished. Your Honor, Mrs. Crawford is currently homeless, unemployed, and has documented mental health issues. My client can provide a stable 2-parent home. Lisa Romano was on her feet instantly. 2-parent home? With the woman who assaulted my client? Alleged assault. Miss Kingsley hasn't been convicted. Because the trial hasn't happened yet. The judge, a stern woman named Patricia Hernandez, who had been on the bench for 20 years, held up her hand. Counselors, please, Mr. Hale. Where is the child currently? Derek stood, trying to look concerned and paternal. In the NICU at Denver Presbyterian, Your Honor. And who has been visiting the child daily? Derek hesitated. Both parents, Your Honor. Mrs. Crawford, the judge said, turning to Madison. Despite being hospitalized yourself, you visited your daughter every day? Madison stood, still weak but determined. Every single day, Your Honor, even when I could barely walk. She's my daughter. Mr. Hale, how many times have you visited? Another pause. 3 times, Your Honor. I've been dealing with legal matters. The judge's expression said everything, but Derek's lawyer wasn't finished. Your Honor, the issue isn't visitation, it's stability. Mrs. Crawford has no income, no permanent residence, and her own family has a history of mental illness. Objection! Lisa was furious now. That's unsubstantiated. Actually, Derek's lawyer smiled. We have documentation that Mrs. Crawford's maternal grandmother suffered from depression and was briefly hospitalized. That was when Dr. William Hartford stood up in the gallery. The courtroom went quiet. William in his white coat, his hospital ID visible, his presence commanding in a way that money couldn't buy. Your Honor, may I approach? Judge Hernandez looked surprised. You're not counsel in this case. I'm Dr. William Hartford, director of Denver Presbyterian Hospital. I'm also Mrs. Crawford's uncle. Derek's lawyer objected immediately. This is highly improper. I'll allow it, the judge said. Terbois. Hartford, you have something to add? William walked to the bench carrying a folder. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Hale's counsel has made numerous claims about Mrs. Crawford's mental fitness. I've personally overseen her care. She has no psychiatric diagnosis. The medication referenced is standard post-trauma support prescribed to assault victims. Additionally, every claim about instability comes from sources financially connected to Mr. Hale. He placed documents on the judge's bench. This is proof of payments Mr. Haley made to 3 individuals who gave statements against my niece. $50,000 total. That's witness tampering, Your Honor. The courtroom erupted. Derek's face went white. His lawyer was on his feet shouting objections. Judge Hernandez banged her gavel. Order! Mr. Hale, is this true? Derek looked at his lawyer, who whispered frantically in his ear. They were former colleagues. I was helping them financially during a difficult time. You were buying testimony, the judge said coldly. I'm granting temporary physical custody to Mrs. Crawford, with supervised visitation for Mr. Hale pending the criminal trial outcome. Your Honor, please. We're adjourned. Madison collapsed into her chair as relief flooded through her. Lisa caught her, helped her stay upright. Carol was crying in the row behind them, and William walked back to his seat, meeting Derek's eyes across the courtroom with a look that said, "You picked the wrong family to destroy." Outside in the parking lot, William found Derek alone beside his Mercedes. You made a mistake, William said quietly, bringing your war into my hospital. Derek turned, trying to summon his old confidence. Who the hell are you to threaten me? I'm the man who's going to make sure you lose everything, just like you tried to do to her. William stepped closer. See, you thought money was power, but real power is having something to fight for that matters more than your own comfort. And I have that. You don't. You can't touch me. I don't need to. The IRS will, the DA will, and when they're dead, you'll have nothing left but regret. William walked away, then turned back. And Derek? When Emma asks about her father someday, Madison will tell her the truth, that you stood in a doorway and watched while she was hurt. That's your legacy. Live with it. Derek stood alone in the parking lot, watching his life unravel, and for the first time understood that consequences were real. Inside the courthouse, Madison held her mother's hand. We won? We won, Carol confirmed. It's not over. William cautioned, the criminal trial is next, but we're building momentum. Uncle Will? Madison looked up at him. Thank you for showing up, for 15 years of silence, and then for this. William's eyes glistened. I should have shown up 15 years ago, Maddie. I'm just grateful I get a second chance. That night, Madison visited Emma in the NICU, held her daughter's tiny hand through the incubator opening, and whispered promises. Promises about a future where violence didn't win, where liars faced consequences, where family meant something. Emma's fingers curled around Madison's pinky, a grip that said, "I'm here. I'm fighting too." And Madison, for the first time since that terrible day, believed they might actually survive this. 6 weeks later, their criminal trial began. District Court was packed with reporters, spectators, people who had followed the story online and wanted to see justice happen in real time. Outside, protesters held signs: "Justice for Madison, protect pregnant women, hold abusers accountable." Madison sat at the prosecution table beside DA Margaret Lawson, with William and Carol directly behind her in the gallery. Emma was still in NECU, but stronger now, 5 pounds and breathing on her own, fighting her way toward going home. Vanessa sat at the defense table in a conservative suit, hair pulled back, the picture of respectability. Her lawyer, Richard Walsh, had coached her well. Look humble, look remorseful. Let the jury see you as human, not monster. Derek sat 3 rows back, required as a witness. He avoided looking at Madison, avoided looking at anyone, just stared at his hands like he could find answers there. "Ladies and gentlemen," DA Lawson began, addressing the jury, this case is about a woman who thought she could destroy another woman's life and walk away. Vanessa Kingsley didn't just kick Madison Crawford. She kicked a pregnant woman carrying an 8-month-old baby. She did it out of jealousy, out of rage, out of a belief that she was entitled to someone else's life. The opening statement set the tone. Prosecution painted Vanessa as calculating. Defense painted Madison as unstable. 2 stories, both using the same facts, leading to different conclusions. That's what trials were. Stories competing to see which one the jury believed. The prosecution called witnesses over 3 days. Nurse Janet described hearing Madison say, "She kicked me, Derek. She kicked me." Dr. William Hartford testified about the bruising pattern, about how the injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma, not a fall. Walsh cross-examined viciously. "Dr. Hartford, isn't it true you're the victim's uncle? That you have personal bias?" "I'm her uncle," William agreed calmly. "I'm also a doctor who's examined 10,000 trauma cases. The evidence speaks for itself." "Your Honor, I move to strike this testimony due to clear familial bias." Judge Hernandez denied it. The witness's credentials stand. The jury can weigh his relationship in their deliberation. Then Madison took the stand. This was the moment everything hinged on: her story, her credibility, her ability to make 12 strangers believe her. "Mrs. Crawford," DA Lawson said gently, "tell the jury what happened on September 15th. Madison took a breath, steadying herself. "I was at the hospital for a routine checkup. My husband arrived with Vanessa Kingsley. They told me they'd been having an affair." Her voice stayed steady, factual. "I went to my exam room. She followed me. She said I wasn't enough for Derek, that my baby was a trap. When I tried to stand up, to get away from her, she kicked me. Hard. I felt the impact. Then I felt my baby stop moving." Her voice broke on the last words. Several jurors looked moved. Others remained skeptical. "What happened next?" "I hit the floor. I felt blood, and I thought my baby was dead. I thought she'd killed my baby." The courtroom was silent. DA Lawson let the moment breathe. "Thank you, Mrs. Crawford." Walsh's cross-examination was brutal. He questioned everything: her memory, her medication, her mental state. He suggested she had attacked Vanessa first, that the kick was self-defense, that Madison was lying to save her marriage. "You hated Miss Kingsley, didn't you?" Walsh demanded. "I was scared of her," Madison replied quietly. "There's a difference. Scared enough to lie about what happened?" Madison looked directly at the jury. "I have no reason to lie. I almost lost my daughter. I lost my marriage. I lost my home. All I have left is the truth." The words landed. Walsh sat down, sensing he had pushed as far as he could without alienating the jury. Then came the security footage. Enhanced, analyzed, played on screens throughout the courtroom. The prosecution's forensic video expert walked the jury through every frame. Here you see Miss Kingsley following Mrs. Crawford into the room. Here, Mrs. Crawford backing away. Here, Miss Kingsley stepping forward. And here, he paused, pointing him. The foot movement is forward, not backward. This is consistent with a kick, not with stepping away from an attacker. The footage played again and again. 12 pairs of eyes watching Vanessa's leg move forward, watching Madison fall, watching a man in the doorway do nothing. Defense tried to discredit the expert, tried to argue the angle was misleading. But the footage was damning. Then Vanessa took the stand. She had practiced this, Walsh coaching her for hours. Be honest about the affair. Show remorse about the outcome. Maintain that it was an accident. Miss Kingsley, Walsh said, tell the jury what happened. I love Derek, Vanessa said, her voice soft and sad. I know that's not popular to say, but I did. When Madison saw me at the hospital, she became hysterical. She screamed that I ruined her life. She grabbed at me. I stepped back to protect myself. She lost her balance and fell. I tried to catch her but couldn't. Did you intend to hurt her? Never. I would never hurt a pregnant woman. It was a good performance, convincing even, but D.A. Lawson's cross-examination dismantled it piece by piece. Miss Kingsley, you loved Derek Hale? Yes. So much that you wanted Madison out of the picture? I wanted Derek to be happy. By destroying his marriage. Vanessa's composure cracked slightly. It was already destroyed. So you decided to help it along by confronting his pregnant wife in a hospital? I just wanted to talk. No. Lawson's voice was sharp now. You wanted to win. And when Madison didn't disappear quietly, you made her disappear. With your foot. That's not what happened. You kicked her. You stood over her while she bled. And then you lied about it because you thought you'd get away with it. She was supposed to just let him go, Vanessa snapped, then realized what she'd said. The courtroom went silent. Lawson smiled slightly. No further questions. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. Madison waited in a courthouse cafe with William, Carol, and Lisa Romano. Every minute felt like an hour. Every hour felt like a day. What if they don't believe me? Madison whispered. They will, William assured her. The evidence is clear. When the call came that the jury had reached a verdict, Madison's hands shook so badly Carol had to help her stand. Back in the courtroom, the jury filed in. Their faces gave nothing away. Judge Hernandez looked at the foreperson. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. In the case of the People versus Vanessa Kingsley, on the charge of assault in the 2nd degree, how do you find? Madison held her breath. The whole courtroom held its breath. We find the defendant guilty. The room erupted. Madison collapsed into sobs. Carol held her. William closed his eyes in relief. Reporters rushed out to file their stories. Protesters outside cheered. Vanessa stared straight ahead, expressionless. Only her hands, clenched white-knuckled in her lap, betrayed her. Judge Hernandez banged her gavel for order. Miss Kingsley, you will be remanded into custody pending sentencing in 30 days. The bailiff approached with handcuffs. Vanessa stood mechanically. As she was let out, she looked back once at Madison. Just once, her face showed something that might have been regret. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Madison, how do you feel? Madison, exhausted and emotionally drained, managed to speak. Grateful for my daughter, for my family, for justice. What do you want to say to other women in similar situations? She thought about that, about all the women watching who had been told their pain didn't matter, who had been called crazy for speaking truth, who had been silenced by power and money. Don't stay silent, Madison said. Don't let them make you small, and find your family, whether blood or chosen. They'll help you fight. William put his arm around her, and they walked away from the cameras, away from the circus, back to what mattered. Emma, healing, life after trauma, justice had been served. But the real work was just beginning. 30 days later, Vanessa Kingsley stood before Judge Hernandez for sentencing. The courtroom was quieter this time. The verdict was decided. Now came consequences. Miss Kingsley, the judge said, you have been found guilty of assault in the 2nd degree. Before I impose sentence, do you wish to make a statement? Vanessa stood, and for the first time, she looked truly broken. The designer suit couldn't hide it. The practiced composure couldn't hide it. Your Honor, her voice shook. I know what I did was wrong. I was angry. I was hurt. I thought if I could just make Madison see that Derek didn't love her anymore, she'd let him go. She paused, gathering courage. But I was wrong, and I'm sorry. She turned to Madison in the gallery. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I hurt your baby. I thought I was fighting for love, but all I did was destroy lives, including my own. It was the first genuine emotion Vanessa had shown throughout the trial. Several people in the courtroom shifted uncomfortably, caught between anger and reluctant empathy. Mrs. Crawford, Judge Hernandez said, you have the right to make a victim impact statement. Madison walked to the podium, carrying papers she had written and rewritten a dozen times. But when she got there, she set them aside and spoke from her heart. Your Honor, 6 months ago I was lying on a hospital floor, bleeding, thinking my baby was dead. I thought my life was over. But my baby survived, and so did I. She looked at Vanessa. Vanessa Kingsley didn't just kick me that day. She kicked the person I used to be, the person who stayed quiet, who made herself small, who believed that keeping peace was more important than demanding respect. Madison's voice grew stronger. I don't hate Vanessa. I pity her, because she thought the only way to have value was to take it from another woman. And that's what this culture taught her. That women are prizes, that marriages are battlegrounds, that violence is acceptable if you call it passion. She turned back to the judge. I don't want revenge, Your Honor. I want change. I want every woman who's ever been told to calm down or not make a scene to know that your voice matters. Your pain matters, and the law will protect you. Madison looked at William in the gallery. My uncle reminded me that one person with integrity can change everything. So I'm not asking for maximum punishment. I'm asking that Miss Kingsley be required to complete domestic violence counseling and speak to young women about what happens when jealousy becomes violence. Because my daughter Emma is going to grow up in a world that's kinder than this one. And that starts with grace, even for people who didn't show it to us. The courtroom was silent. Even the reporters had stopped typing. Judge Hernandez composed herself. Thank you, Mrs. Crawford. Miss Kingsley, I hereby sentence you to 4 years in state correctional facility, 5 years probation upon release, 1,000 hours of community service, speaking on domestic violence prevention, a permanent restraining order, prohibiting contact with Madison Crawford or her family, and mandatory counseling for the duration of your probation. Vanessa nodded, tears streaming down her face. As she was led out, she looked back at Madison one last time and mouthed, I'm sorry. Madison nodded, not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. Because healing meant recognizing that hurt people, and the cycle had to break somewhere. A week later, Derek Hale's tax evasion trial concluded. The federal prosecutor had been thorough, documenting years of hidden income, offshore accounts, and fraudulent deductions. Madison had been called to testify, had sat in that witness box and told the truth about how Derek had controlled every aspect of their finances. Did you have knowledge of your husband's financial crimes? The prosecutor asked. No, Derek handled everything. He said I didn't need to worry about it. Did you benefit from these crimes? No, when Derek left, he froze all our accounts. I couldn't even buy diapers for my daughter. Derek's allocution was brief. He stood before the judge, defeated, and finally told something resembling truth. Your Honor, I have no excuses. I built an empire on lies. I cheated on my wife. I stood by while she was attacked. I tried to take her daughter from her. I am a coward. He looked at Madison in the gallery. Madison, I can't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. All I can say is, Emma is lucky to have you as a mother, and I'm sorry she's unlucky to have me as a father. The judge sentenced him to 8 years federal prison, $4.7 million in restitution to the IRS, $2.1 million to Madison, and loss of all parental rights. Derek was led away in handcuffs. Madison didn't watch, just held Carol's hand and thought about how much power she had given to a man who never deserved it. Outside the courthouse, a reporter asked how she felt. I feel sad, Madison said honestly, for who he could have been, but mostly I feel free. And she was. For the first time in years, truly free. 1 year after the assault, Madison sat in Dr. Ramsey's office for her weekly therapy session. The nightmares had decreased from nightly to twice a week. The panic attacks were manageable now, triggered less frequently. How are you sleeping? Dr. Ramsey asked. Better. Most nights I sleep through. In the hypervigilance, Madison considered, I still check locks twice, still flinch at raised voices, but I'm learning to recognize when the fear is reasonable versus when it's trauma talking. That's significant progress. Progress. Such a clinical word for the hard work of healing. Madison lived now in a modest two-bedroom apartment. Nothing like the mansion she had shared with Derek. But it was hers, paid for by the restitution money, furnished simply, decorated with photos of Emma. Emma, now 18 months old, healthy and bright, and completely unaware of the violence that had preceded her birth. She played with blocks while Carol visited, bringing groceries and grandmother's love. How was therapy? Carol asked after Madison returned from her appointment. Hard, but good. You're still going twice a week? I have to, Mom. I can't let what happened define me, but I have to process it. Carol hugged her daughter. You're the strongest person I know. I'm not strong, Madison said quietly. I'm surviving. There's a difference. The Madison Project operated out of donated space at a community center. Madison led a support group 3 evenings a week, helping women navigate legal systems that felt designed to protect the powerful. The nonprofit had helped 68 women in its first year. Not thousands. Not the fantasy empire Madison had imagined in optimistic moments. Just 68 real women with real stories. How did you afford lawyers? A woman named Sarah asked during one session. I can barely afford rent. I got lucky, Madison admitted. My uncle helped, crowdfunding helped, but most women don't get that. That's why we're partnering with law students at the University of Denver to provide free legal aid. It's not perfect, but it's something. Another woman, older, asked, how do you not hate men after what happened? Madison paused, considering. I hate what Derek did. I hate what Vanessa did. But I don't hate all men. My uncle saved me. Detective Reeves fought for me. Hate would just make me bitter, and I won't let them take that from me, too. The Madison Project wasn't glamorous. Madison made $48,000 a year and lived modestly. But every woman they helped, every case where the system worked even partially right, felt like reclaiming something Vanessa's kick had tried to take away. The restitution money from Derek sat mostly untouched in a trust for Emma. Madison wanted her daughter to have choices, opportunities, freedom from financial fear. All the things Madison had surrendered to build Derek's dream. Walking through Denver Presbyterian Hospital one afternoon, visiting with William, Madison felt the weight of memory. Here was the corridor where it happened. Here was a room 437, now just another exam room with no evidence of the violence it had witnessed. Do you ever regret it? William asked as they walked. Fighting back? All the publicity and pain? Madison thought about it. No, because Emma will grow up knowing her mother stood up. That truth mattered more than convenience. That family showed up when it counted. Speaking of which, William said, stopping by his office, I got a call from Massachusetts General, Chief of Surgery position. Madison's eyes widened. Uncle Will, that's your dream job. It was, he said simply. What do you mean was? I turned it down. Why? William knelt to Emma's level. The toddler was fascinated by his stethoscope, trying to put it in her mouth. Because someone needs to teach this little one how to skip rocks. And I missed 15 years with you. I'm not missing another day with her. Madison's eyes filled with tears. You can't give up your dream for us. I'm not giving it up. I'm choosing a better one. He stood, meeting his niece's eyes. Family isn't something you sacrifice for success, Maddie. Family is success. They hugged in the hospital corridor, Emma between them, completing the circle that had been broken for so long. Some things, it turned out, mattered more than corner offices and prestigious titles. Some things were priceless. William smiled. Besides, I already taught you to skip rocks when you were her age. Time to pass it on. The best rocks are the ones that look broken but still flame. Madison remembered. She had been 7, heartbroken over something at school. William had taken her to the lake and taught her that beauty wasn't about perfection. It was about resilience. Still true, she said softly. That night, tucking Emma into bed, Madison looked at the photos on the wall. Her darkest day in the hospital bed, her fight on the courthouse steps, her victory at the bill signing. Her life now, modest but real. Mama, story, Emma said sleepily. Which one, baby? Brave one. Madison smiled, settling on the edge of the bed. Once upon a time, there was a princess who got knocked down, and when she fell, she found out she was stronger than she knew, because her family was there to help her stand back up. Like Uncle Will? Exactly like Uncle Will and Grandma Carol and all the people who said, we believe you. And you? And me, I learned to believe in myself. Emma's eyes drifted closed. Madison kissed her forehead and walked to the window. Denver's lights sparkled outside, ordinary and beautiful. Somewhere out there, Derek was in prison. Vanessa was in prison, and Madison was here, free, building a life that belonged only to her. The Colorado State Capitol building gleamed in morning sunlight as Madison walked up its steps carrying Emma. William and Carol walked beside her, and Lisa Romano brought up the rear. They were here for the signing of House Bill 1273, officially titled the Pregnant Victims Protection Act, but already nicknamed Madison's Law by the media. Governor Elizabeth Torres waited in her office, surrounded by legislators who had championed the bill through committees and floor votes. The law increased penalties for assaults on pregnant women, mandated hospital security evidence preservation, provided emergency legal aid for victims, and established statewide training for medical staff on recognizing abuse. Mrs. Crawford, the governor said warmly, shaking Madison's hand, this law exists because of your courage. Madison shook her head. It exists because the system failed. I just refuse to accept that failure as permanent. The signing ceremony was simple. Governor Torres spoke about the importance of protecting vulnerable populations. Madison gave brief remarks, her voice steady now, no longer the scared woman from a year ago. This law means my daughter will grow up in a state that protects women, that believes women, that says violence has consequences. Madison looked at Emma in Carol's arms. That's all I ever wanted. When the governor signed the bill, Emma reached for the pen. The cameras loved it. The image of a toddler touching the pen that made her mother's suffering into systemic change went viral within hours. Baby Emma signs Madison's Law, the headlines read. But the real work happened quietly, away from cameras. In courtrooms where the law's new provisions helped prosecutors secure convictions. In hospitals where staff received training on evidence preservation. In legal aid offices where women found help navigating divorce and custody battles. The Madison Project tracked the law's impact. In its first year, Colorado saw a 32% increase in assault convictions involving pregnant victims. Hospitals reported better evidence collection. Survivors reported feeling more believed. It wasn't perfect, no law was, but it was better, and better mattered. 2 years after the assault, Madison stood at a lake with Emma, teaching her to skip rocks just as William had taught her. Emma's first attempt plunked immediately into the water. Her second did better, bouncing once. Like this, Madison demonstrated, the rock skipping 5 times before sinking. Again, Emma demanded, and Madison laughed, scooping up more rocks. William joined them, having driven up from Denver for the weekend. Carol was back at the cabin making lunch. This had become their tradition. Family weekends at the lake, rebuilding what had been lost, creating new memories to replace the painful ones. She's got your determination, William observed, watching Emma practice. She's got a lot of things from me, Madison said, good and bad. I just hope the good outweighs the bad. It does. You're showing her how to fight for what matters, how to stand up when standing is hard, how to choose grace without surrendering justice. William picked up a rock, flat and smooth. The best lessons aren't about winning, and Maddie. They're about how you fight. Madison watched her daughter, this miracle baby born from trauma, thriving now in sunshine and love. Emma laughed as a rock finally skipped 3 times, her joy uncomplicated and pure. People ask me if I won, Madison said quietly, and I say I survived. I protected my daughter. I changed a law. I rebuilt my family. I found my voice. That sounds like winning to me. It is, Madison agreed. Just not the winning I expected when this all started. I thought winning meant getting everything back. The marriage, the money, the life I lost. And now? Now I know winning means building something better from the pieces, something real. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching Emma play. Behind them, Carol called that lunch was ready. Simple food, simple company, simple happiness that felt revolutionary after everything they had survived. That evening, as Madison tucked Emma into bed in the cabin, her daughter asked for the brave story one more time. Once upon a time, Madison began, but Emma interrupted. Tell the real one. Madison paused. The real one? About you. So Madison told it, age-appropriate, simplified, but true, about being hurt and scared, about Uncle Will showing up, about fighting back, about how sometimes the scariest thing is asking for help and the bravest thing is accepting it. And they lived happily ever after? Emma asked hopefully. Madison smiled. They lived, and that was enough, because it was. Life after trauma wasn't a fairy tale. It was daily choices to heal, to trust, to build. It was therapy twice a week and checking locks and flinching at raised voices. It was also laughter and love and Emma's hand in hers. It was complicated and messy and real. That night, standing at the cabin window, watching stars reflect on the lake, Madison thought about the woman she had been 2 years ago. So eager to please, so willing to shrink, so convinced that love meant sacrifice. She wasn't that woman anymore. Couldn't be, even if she wanted to. Vanessa's kick had shattered more than Madison's leg. It had shattered the illusion that staying small kept you safe. Her phone buzzed with an email. Another woman finding the Madison Project through their website asking for help. Madison read the story, saw her own pain reflected, and felt the old helplessness try to rise. Then she remembered. She wasn't helpless anymore. She forwarded the email to Lisa Romano with a note. Can we take this case? Lisa's response came quickly. Already on it. That was victory. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of people willing to fight against it. Not perfection, but progress. Not a fairy tale ending, but an honest one. Madison looked at the photo of Emma on her phone wallpaper. Her daughter, asleep in the next room, would grow up with this story, would know her mother fought back, would learn that truth mattered, that family showed up, that grace and justice could coexist. Text appeared on her phone screen, a notification about Madison's law being proposed in 2 more states. Then another message from a woman in California thanking her for speaking out, saying it gave her courage to press charges against her own abuser. These were the ripples, small stones skipping across water, creating circles that spread farther than you could see. Madison hadn't set out to change laws or inspire strangers. She had just set out to survive. But survival, it turned out, was revolutionary. She whispered to the night, to the lake, to whatever force in the universe listened to broken people trying to heal. We made it. Emma and me, we actually made it. And somewhere in the space between stars and water, it felt like the universe whispered back, I know. Madison Crawford's story didn't end with perfect justice or complete healing. It ended with a woman rebuilding her life one day at a time, with a daughter who would grow up knowing that her mother was brave, and with a law that bore her name and helped others survive what she had survived. It ended with Emma reaching for her, with William's sacrifice, with Carol's steadfast love, with 68 women helped and counting. It ended with checking locks twice but no longer apologizing for it, with nightmares that came less frequently, with a future that belonged to her. That was enough, more than enough. That was everything.